Thanks for tuning in to this episode of I Have Something to Say, where subject matter experts are unafraid and unapologetic about sharing their perspectives regarding issues that impact our lives. They speak up because basically they give a shit. So if you're tired of canned answers and want to finally hear real people cut through the BS and talk about real issues, this is the podcast for you. I'm your host, Sami Marrero from Urbander, and behind our mixer is our producer, Chris Majoka from UdoU. Hi, everyone, and we're back in I Have Something to Say, and in this episode, I am introducing you all to my dear friend, Le'Kiesha French-Merritt, all the way in Atlanta, Georgia. Hi, Le'Kiesha, how are you?
Hello. I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing great. Finally, I was able to pin you down because we've both been extremely busy working together and also on individual projects. But just a brief introduction. Le'Kiesha and I met through a dear friend, Kelly Burton, who was last fall at some conference or something. And she calls me up. She's like, I need to introduce you to this woman that I just met because you guys are twins. And
Yeah.
and it's no lie. It's been
Yeah.
incredible. And Le'Kiesha works, she has her own company. Well, actually, you're a serial entrepreneur, but the one that we're going to highlight today is Preneurology. And basically, you focus on capacity building and creating a pipeline of solid entrepreneurs in communities of color through programming that's directed towards youth. I mean, that's one of the many things that you do, but that's how I met you, right? And so you conduct all of this work through a partnership or an association with Georgia Tech, and part of the MBDA program, the Minority Business Agency programming done there. But this work you do globally. You know, it's not just in Atlanta in your backyard. But just tell me a little bit about how you landed in entrepreneurship. I know the story, but I want everyone to hear about your trajectory.
Yeah. So thank you, Sammy, for that wonderful introduction. I always say my journey to entrepreneurship really began when I was younger and had ideas and really wanted to help solve problems. So I always say when we look now at entrepreneurship really just being a problem solving and bringing our talents to help to solve problems across different spaces. That's how I was introduced to entrepreneurship. So really early on, I had an interest in helping develop youth because I had some volunteer experience at a Lutheran church in high school and was able to really see the impact that you have on an entire family by kind of stopping the bleeding where it starts, really shifting the mindset of the next generation, helping them to realize their full potential and take their talents and skills and showing them how they can turn that into enterprise and self-sufficiency, and that inspires the parents, it inspires the family, it just shifts the trajectory of generational wealth, particularly for Black and brown families. So I had a lot of experience in program development. I've worked in the nonprofit sector, the public and private school curriculum development, and ultimately decided to go rogue and disrupt the space and at a time where there was not, entrepreneurship was not sexy, startup was not a thing, but really wanted to test and to see if we could actually develop this mindset of preneurology, where like that intersection of psychology, education, economic development, that ultimately leads to pathways to prosperity,
Yeah.
and then started developing that program, which was called CEO of My Life. And because that was the ultimate goal, and that's what I had to be. I grew up in the inner city, and I was really talented and skills and had skills and kept developing new skills. And so I just wanted to solve problems. And I did not have equitable access, and so had to knock down and kick down a lot of doors. and then just disrupt. So disruption, even, which is the core of innovation to me, was very natural, and I put that into the curriculum and into the program and into CEO of my life, and that began to change those families, and then we see the impact that it had on the community. So it ended up being this
Hmm.
communal model, um, to building pathways to prosperity, and changing communities. So it grew from there. We just scaled. It worked. If it doesn't work, you pivot. And I failed forward, a lot of failure. And I credit failure to helping me to be able to adapt and to pivot. But it has now grown to this global organization where we help develop emerging innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystems, because that is that is the future, and that's how we're
Yeah.
going to build a more equitable future. So equitable models, and just helping to things to remain human centered. So I'm a huge design thinker, and we absolutely use that in our framework. And so we're just going and solving problems with our framework and methodology in different spaces. And so sometimes that is in the education space. We work with departments of economic development, tech industry, startup, and so that looks like entrepreneurial support programming, K through 12 training, but also consulting and helping to build frameworks and connective tissue to
Hmm.
help, to help change, to move the needle, really, to change the world. I
Yeah.
know it's cliche, but we imagine a world where everybody is able to realize their full potential, and we just feel like entrepreneurship. I lived it in my life. I like to walk my talk, and it has been absolutely economic justice and activism. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. And those two things combined, right? Because I think that's why Kelly said these two need to talk, because it's pairing
yeah,
entrepreneurship with activism. And some people think you can't do that, but we're doing it, right? And
we're
so
doing it.
it was really interesting to me. I mean, the connection was so great. She's like, you guys need to hop on a call. And the first time we spoke, we were on the phone, I think for like 4 hours, something
Or
crazy like
yeah,
that.
hmm
And then it was like, okay, we need to go. So then Shalonda and I, drove up to meet with you, and you hosted us at Georgia Tech, and then you had this brilliant idea that we developed. I'm like, oh my God, we'll help you with that. Yes, totally. That's why she's like, but is this crazy? And I'm like, no, you're no, I love you, Loca. You could be Loca with me. I'll be Loca with you, right? So,
yeah, you were completely, like, it was like love at first sight. We clicked, and it's almost like we have been living out the same life in different parts of the world. And what I loved about it, it was like, what I imagine, like, I talk a lot about equity and the Black and brown community coming together, because we
yeah.
have more in common than we do differences. And so
Hmm.
we'll talk about this fight for equity and equality, and that is what it's going to take. It takes cross collaboration, and so I feel like our relationship being an example, of how that gets done. And so both us being business women, and I absolutely look up to you and respect you, and have
And
called you
same
many.
here to you. Yes,
Yeah, and
absolutely.
and so you just have become one of my people, one of my
Yes.
people, and and my identical twin, in addition to
Yes, totally. It's so scary. It's scary, people. I don't even know how to explain it. It's insane. So so it's like this feeling of nothing's off the table. Like and I let that sign that you have on the back of your office right there, that it says create, what is it? Create the things you wish
you were
existed.
consistent.
I mean, that's exactly it. It's like it's so much fun, right? To create these
Yeah,
programs and to create impact, and to redesign and rethink how we do things. And so anyway, it's been a blast. Thank you, Kelly, for the
yeah. Thank
for
you,
the
Kelly.
intro. Yeah, mwah, mwah, for the introduction. And so we had started crafting, a program that we can work on together, and it was very focused on exactly that, on breaking down the silos between the Black and brown communities through entrepreneurship. And then COVID hit, And we're like, okay, so I guess we have to put a pin on that, right? Because we're in Orlando, you're in Atlanta. We were going to, implement a pilot elsewhere. And then on a Saturday morning, I get a call from you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, what's going on?" And you're like, check your email. And it was like this massive RFP, like a 30-page monster.
Yeah.
And when I read it, I'm like, oh my God, this is like amazing. Like creating something from scratch that can impact minority businesses in the Southeast. And it
Yeah.
included Georgia and it
Yeah.
included Florida and all everybody else in
It
between.
just
And
all it
and I'm
just
like,
all makes sense.
it just made sense. And your question to me was like, you think we can do it? I'm like, okay, now you've lost your marbles because this thing is due on Thursday. I mean, it was like a Saturday morning. Talk about pulling overnighters. It was
Yes,
insane.
it was
And
insane.
you brought in all the guns. You called Georgia Tech, you called Donna, and it was great. It was such a smooth process, really, and just no sleep and putting our best out there, and I'm just delighted. I want to thank you publicly for including Urbander, to support Preneurology, so we could
Right.
do this work and support with the Latino segment. I can't even believe it. Because newsflash, it's happening,
It's
right?
happening.
So yes, it's
Yes.
happening.
Yes.
Yay.
Right.
Yay. And
Yes.
so share with us what we're up to, all the good stuff that we're
All
up
the good
to.
stuff, get all the goodies. So yeah, so we obviously submitted the proposal in partnership with the Georgia Tech Enterprise Innovation Institute,
Mhm.
Morehouse College Center for Innovation, and PRENEURology Global. So Georgia Tech is spearheading the project, and they're the
Mhm.
lead. And so Donna Ennis, who heads up the Georgia Tech and Atlanta MBDA, she's amazing. She is a rock star. She has been a champion for MBEs for forever, and
Mhm.
so she, for her to be leading us in this work is a blessing and a gift in
Yeah.
itself. So. And so I knew Don and I, talked about the project, and so she's like, let me check it out on the Georgia Tech side. And she said she wanted to go after it.
Yeah.
And so she reached out to me. So she said, yeah, let's do it. And we really just talked about how this would just impact communities of color through entrepreneurship. So through helping the
Mhm.
MBE, how this would help families. And so we were talking about, where do we focus on? And so we wanted to start with the Southeast. And so ultimately, what we'll be doing is from Florida to Kentucky, we'll be, taking all of this activity that's happening within these ecosystems of innovation and entrepreneurship, with, minority businesses that are innovative, have
Mhm.
innovative ideas. We want to help them to bring those to market, to scale, to grow, and to enter the ecosystem in an equitable way. And so we have to take that activity and create connectivity and create a
Mhm.
fertile ground for which these businesses can flourish and thrive. And so we will be starting with connecting with the MBEs on the ground. So I'm really excited about us taking this human-centered design approach, to take the time to really be intentional about understanding what the trajectory of Black and brown and businesses are, what minority businesses face on a day-to-day basis.
Mhm.
What are the obstacles and challenges? What are those pain points ultimately? And then we get to be creative and be innovative and human centered and create minimum viable solutions around connectivity, about how we use that those relationships across regions to
Mhm.
help these ecosystems to operate more efficiently, so that it does feel to the MBE like this was designed for me. This is,
Mhm.
I come to this hub, and by the way, is it right now, it is the Southeast Innovation Hub. And
Mhm.
so we are looking to connect, Florida's resources to Georgia, to South Carolina, to Kentucky. There might be some great programs that are running in South Carolina at an incubator, a training course, a workshop, a venture capitalist that host a series, and there's an entrepreneur in Kentucky or in Orlando that could really benefit and has a business that is in that sector and industry. And so we know that because pathways are not equitable at this point, we want.
It's okay. Hi.
I told him I was filming, so I think he it got the best of him. But no, we want,
And Kelsey
we want
will show up in like another 10 minutes too.
yeah, she's gone. She's gone for the day. So I have
Oh,
yeah, the
okay.
4-year-old girl, so she's gone for the day. And so he's taking her place. And no, but yeah, so thinking about connecting those resources, breaking down those silos. A lot of the times, the entrepreneur journey is very lonely. It is siloed.
Yeah.
Um, and for any entrepreneur, so you can imagine being a minority entrepreneur, and not only is it a lonely, siloed experience, but it's also an inequitable one. Where you are not
Yeah.
sure if you are actually, if your business is failing, um, or for that matter, succeeding because of your model or your
Mhm.
the solution you have, or is it because you have not had access to resources to help you to
Right.
realize the full potential? So we ultimately want to see more Black innovation, more Black ideas, Black and brown solutions, so that we can all benefit. And I think we can transform communities. And so I see this as a trickle effect. So this Southeast Innovation Hub will ultimately, in 2 years, be a prototype and a model
Mhm.
for how we boost innovation within minority inner cities and minority communities, and then take that model and hopefully spread it across the world, to say this is
Yeah.
how we build those equitable innovation
Yeah.
entrepreneurial pathways.
Yeah.
There is also a HBCU piece of the project that Morehouse Center for Innovation will be heading up. Tiffany Bussey from
Mhm.
that part, and then Georgia Tech will be putting a minority business development agency vertical inside of their ATDC startup incubator, which is amazing. So
Yes, totally, totally. And I know that Dr. Busi also is looking for Hispanic serving institutions too, to include them
yes,
as
yes,
well. So
yes.
this is an all-encompassing effort. It's a 2-year program. It's a remedy, not a band-aid. And yeah, and it's epic. It's huge. And I'm just so excited. And so I know the answer to this question. What does it look like?
Yes, yes. What does it look like? Oh gosh. This hub looks like, oh gosh.
Well, it's like you always tell me. You always tell me. I don't know yet,
Yeah,
but it's
it
gonna be
is
good.
it is it looks like just something you've never seen before. And we are in a design phase. So we are
Yeah,
like true designers and artists. We
yeah,
don't know exactly what it's gonna be, but it's gonna be great. It's gonna be wonderful.
yeah,
It's going to be
yeah.
brilliant. And I say that because it is human centered, and human centered design work is like art. It is
Yeah.
the minority, but the Black, Brown, Asian communities, they are our muse. And
Mhm.
so we get to design for them. So no, we don't know what it's going to look like, and that's the beautiful part about is
Yeah.
that a lot of times you get programs, initiatives that are designed and they quickly jump to programming, throwing
Mhm.
together things with all good intention, but it's not intentional and not
Right.
human. So we have some work to do. It is a tall order. We
Yeah.
have a lot of work to
Yeah.
do. So I make no mistake about that. We understand the scope of work. We have rolled up our sleeves, and are already diving into this work. And
Yeah.
look out for us and be looking out to hear from us so that we can hear from you. We're not just going to be talking about this. We're going to be building it with the community, with the minority
Yeah.
business
Yeah.
enterprise. So we look
And wait,
forward to
yeah.
partnering.
Yeah, totally. And we kind of started with that already, right? With the short IDIs, the initial
Yeah,
in-depth interviews, just
we
to
have.
probe and get a feel. So what do you feel were some of your greatest takeaways? Because I know that we started with some assumptions because we're minority business owners too,
Right,
so
right.
so we came in with some assumptions about what the grievances or challenges were, and that's part of the exercise, right? Is to come out with a hypothesis and then see, is it still prevalent? Because we started our businesses more than a decade ago, right? But
Yes.
is it still prevalent? And so, right? And so, what to you was like a big aha moment when you heard or participated in some of these initial, just quick half-hour probing sessions,
Yeah.
just to start getting a feel for
Oh
what the
my.
needs were on the ground?
Yeah, just initially diving in, we discovered very quickly that there is pain
Hmm.
and frustration for MBEs around relationships. All
Hmm.
right. So around accessible relationships that lead to procurement and contracts. And a lot of the times it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Hmm.
And we talk to a lot of these business owners and they have these amazing networks, of 10, 8 people that they go to, but for that matter, though, that's their village. And I think when you are starting a business, because it's so lonely, you have a village. But then you also need access to you know people who are going to help you move the ball down the field and ultimately land it, right? So
Right.
we found is that the inequity that lies from those initial conversations, there's inequity in the relationship building and the connectivity for not the CEOs of companies, so we don't lack mentors in regards to round tables and people, hearing from people on panels and workshops
Yeah.
and conferences, where we get to hear these people, which is important as well. Like, important to hear what they're thinking, the direction and vision they're taking these different companies and
Mhm.
organizations in, so that we can be developing solutions and helping them. However, when it comes to business growth and scaling and growing your idea, these businesses don't have the relationships with the decision makers, that
Right.
have access to the decision makers that really help move the needle, and will be the difference between a company that has a really awesome, innovative business idea or solution. The difference between them getting $1 million contract is not doesn't lie within them needing to do more, prove out the proof of concept. A lot of times they've
Right.
done it over and over again, but they'll get stuck in
Right.
that cycle because they can't make traction and they're frustrated. But a lot of times it's just not having access to the people to say, wow, look at that, let's take that, that would be great here, and plugging in, and boom, you have, that's when you have MOUs, you have contracts that are developed. And so this is not given away. So to me, this is not like a, affirmative action or any type of, these are innovative businesses, products
That
and
are
services
currently exist,
that are
that are exist.
currently
They're just
exist.
not plugged in. They're
They're
just
just
not.
not plugged in, and they're running like what I call the Red Queen's race. They're running in place. They can't grow and scale, and when they do, it takes so much to make that little bit of traction. 10 years, 5 years, when it takes an average business 2 to 3 years, it takes a minority business, 10 years, to make the same sort of traction. So it exposed the low hanging fruit in terms of the inequities, and then
Yeah.
so that was one thing, the relationships, the access to decision makers, and then
Right.
the that was quickly revealed was the I'll call it the failure fund, right? The failure funding. A lot of these businesses, when they started, when we heard their stories,
Yeah.
we asked them, how much capital would you have needed, to be able to ideate to, and we know how important failure is to any business. And
Yeah.
when you have a minority business, because you don't have necessarily that generational wealth or family members to tap into to support, so that you can, not just play around, but that you can innovate. Innovation is
Right.
creativity, trying to
Right.
test, to see
Yeah.
what works. a lot of times we have to, as minority businesses, pick one thing and go with it because we're giving all we got. We put in every, whether it's
Yeah.
$20, $50, $100,
Right.
putting everything into it. In some cases, building it from nothing, bootstrapping. So
Right.
that what was revealed was also that there's just not the funding is not there to fund new ideas, to birth new innovation coming from these minority businesses that have really innovative products, and we need their solutions. We need their ideas in this world to help shape this world.
Yes.
And so that is so important. So those were just for me the first findings.
Yeah. I agree. I agree with those two things. And it's funny that you mentioned about, because that to me was an aha moment. And that
Mhm.
that initial investment, that it falls within a range, right? I mean, we figured out some kind of a range. It's not that much in the grand scheme of things, but it would afforded them the luxury, right, of exploration, of ideation, of trial and error, but that's just an added pressure, that having to pay the bills and put food on the table, in
Yeah,
black and brown communities, that are trying to launch a business, you're not afforded with, because you don't have that initial, like, really not huge investment. It's like you tell people that are non BIPOC, how much what this initial investment would be, and they'd be like, "That's it,"
that's it.
and
And
so,
and
yeah.
and that what lies at the a huge assumption. Again, we still have a lot of work to do, but one of the assumptions is that this goes back to systemic racism,
Hmm.
and how it's rooted in empathy, right? Because I think empathy will allow us to give grace to these entrepreneurs because we know they don't have. So you give where you can't give the funding, give grace, at least
Hmm.
in the meantime as we're working on that. Because but that only comes when you develop empathy, and we give. And so to look at our the other entrepreneurs who have that generational wealth, for them when they're thinking about funding a black and brown or Asian business, to have that empathy and understanding. But that comes from understanding the journey, and we just don't know that story. So part of this is,
Yeah.
us helping to build this hub around that. And so we know when we look on Google and you look up, startup Atlanta, and you go on and look at what these maps of the ecosystems look like. Part of what we're doing is uncovering what that ecosystem looks like for MBEs, because there is
Right.
fragmented. We have to be able to marry those two ecosystems, to create
Yeah.
that equitable experience, and lay out that pathway for MBEs. And the other piece that I'll mention is that we're going to be working just as closely with what we call the nodes, right? The entrepreneur support organizations, the incubators and accelerators. We're not trying to change or alter what those organizations are doing. They have amazing programs, and so it's a huge assumption to say that their programs are not equitable, right? I think that's a huge assumption.
Right.
It's just that we are not connected, and so the connectivity lies with the MBEs connecting to decision makers and connecting to each other as well. On this,
Yeah.
so these support organizations and institutions connecting to one another to operate more efficient,
Hmm.
so that they can create more accessible pathways and more low hanging fruit. And I think that is, so the connectivity is through and through. It is human centered, and we have enough. So this is, we're also trying to come from a place of abundance. We don't have to. We're not trying to create another incubator. We're not trying to create another program. We're trying to create a connected human a framework for connected human experience that is equitable, and for these for MBEs, for entrepreneurs and innovators. So
Yes. Yes. I'm very excited. I think that in this initial round of interviews that were done, and it was like the response from our networks, um and just minority business owners that just we reached out to, because we tried to throw out a really wide net, that were able to participate on short notice, because we're like, that's why I love when we work together, because you're like, let's just get it done, right? um
Let's just get it done. And
yeah, yeah, I know. Yeah, there's this sense of urgency, right? And I think that people who know us know that. And
know
so
that.
it was interesting to me to see how people said, "Yes, I'm in," so quickly, because we kind of, were able to pull this all together in, less than a month, and because they told us go, and then we went.
Right,
So
right. And I think that,
it's been great. Yeah.
yeah, but it speaks to the relationships that we have with the minority business owners on the ground. I think the beautiful
Yeah.
part about the project is that, us along with Georgia Tech and Morehouse, we do this work every day. We work with entrepreneurs on the ground, and so yeah, it was really easy to be able to get that buy-in, that trust. So trust is so important, right? And
Yeah.
so one of those things where when you look at the minority communities, there is a trust issue when it comes to equity, right? And
Yes.
access. And so, and
Mhm.
vulnerability, because although entrepreneurship
Mhm.
is a lonely path, that means that it's also very private, because it's so much
Mhm.
that is tied into, your own personal wealth. And we know a lot of the
Mhm.
communities, we don't have that generational wealth. So some of the things that you had to do to get your business started, or things that you still deal with, being able to trust an organization or program enough to reveal that so that they can help you is something that we have
Mhm.
to consider. Maybe not address particularly, but consider as we are developing, what this connectivity looks like and what an efficient, equitable pathway looks like for these communities. So yeah, we are very excited. We have a lot of good things in the works. And we'll
Yeah.
be, building this plane, like as we're flying it. We like to walk our talk. And although there's a sense of urgency, we also are focused on sustainability. We want a scalable, sustainable
Mhm.
that finally puts a pin in this, and that's what we're
Yeah.
looking to develop. So we're going to have a lot of assumptions. We're going to fail through this. We're going to all four MBEs,
Mhm.
and that's the beautiful part. So we are truly, this project is in service to minority businesses, business enterprises.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so excited, and what, but we're just kicking this off. I know it's going to be a 2-year program. I know that it's very organic in nature, in the sense where, again, we're just building from the ground up. It doesn't exist, so that's the really cool part about it. But in this journey, we were talking not too long ago, we were talking about, someone mentioned about finding allies. And I love what your response. Lakeisha was like, we don't need allies. What is it that we need?
We don't need allies. We need accomplices. We need accomplices. When we need the same level of, and an ally brings the energy, but we need the same level of risk and of sacrifice, and empathy. Empathy means my issue becomes your issue, and I'm going down with you. I'm going up to the top with you, and I'm coming down with you, because this work is disruptive to the current
Mhm.
system of systemic racism. It speaks.
Mhm.
It is pushing against the very systems and processes by which we have
Mhm.
learned to build on, and a lot of people have been very
Mhm.
successful. So that
Mhm.
disruption is going to cause reactions, and
Mhm.
people will sacrifice. There will be sacrifices, just like in the civil rights movement and any movement in this country, in this world for that matter. There's blood, sweat, and tears, that are left on the ground at the
Yeah.
end of the day, that results in this beautiful, moving of the needle for many
Yeah.
people. So we, an allyship, says, I will root you on, I will root you on. I will try to do what I can. Accomplice is, I'm in there with you, and I'm throwing everything I got into it. I'm willing to
Into it too.
lose everything. And because you have, for a lot of minority communities, we say we have nothing to lose, right? In a sense of, nothing is
Mhm.
in our humanization,
Yeah.
and our equity, and
Mhm.
equality. But for our allies, our white allies, in some they have everything to lose in regards to the
Mhm.
system by which they can't help the system that their wealth and their comfortabilities
Yeah.
are built on. But they have everything to lose. We're just saying that, you can't keep that safe. That is allyship, keeping that safe.
Yeah.
You got to be willing to put it all out on the table. So we're both on the same. We're level set where, we
Yeah.
both have, you have everything to lose, I have nothing to lose, and we're going in this together head first. And we'll be
Yeah.
okay. We'll figure it out together. But
Yeah.
I see you and myself, and so I'm fighting for your humanity, for you to
Yeah.
be treated like a human being. And I'm
Yeah.
willing to, and to get rid of my comforts to do that. So that's
Yeah.
just where we have to be, I think, at this point. So
Yeah, and that's the starting point. It's so funny 'cause we've been on several meetings, especially recently. We won't mention where, but all Zoom. But
episode two.
where what was that?
I said episode two.
Episode two. Exactly, exactly. But but that that it feels like you could cut the air even through Zoom with a knife, right? Or it's so
Ooh.
thick, and you have these conversations, and it's like, okay, uncomfortable, awkward. And some people may classify that. It was funny because when we get off the call and debrief with people that were on the call, um they categorize this feeling, right, as, oh, that was a flop, or that, I loved it when you pushed back, and you said, no, actually, that's how it's supposed to feel. It's supposed to feel uncomfortable, otherwise we're not doing the work, right? And
We're
so,
not.
yeah, do you think that that's one of the biggest barriers, is trying to get in these spaces where you have thought leaders or key stakeholders, whatever you want to call it, and try to disrupt by having these conversations in such an open way about the inequities, about the systematic racism, about not only, what it looked like with concrete examples, but also what possible disruptive solutions could be, like the minimal viable solutions that we already know exist, you know? The very black and brown communities, they already know how to fix a lot of these problems. They just don't have access to the resources and the wealth,
We're
to
not
do it,
to do
right?
that, to do
So,
it.
but do you feel that that's the biggest challenge right now, is just getting the accomplices at that level, at the decision making level?
Yes, I do. And this is not just from my experience. I've heard many people, people of color, who are who have close contact, and work very closely with a lot of these, key decision makers and leaders across sectors. And they're saying that the hardest thing is to getting people to actually, you know, admit that this is real, that it's an issue
Mm-hmm.
first, because I think there's a spectrum, so there's some folks who,
Right.
like, not believing that systemic racism exists, but then also not believing that because just because somebody might say, oh, I acknowledge it does exist, but I don't believe that it's something that we should be focused on solving. I think we just need to, you know, um, you know, alter the system. We don't need to create new systems. There's not a we don't need to tear
Mm-hmm.
down what we have. Why do we need to do that? This works. We can just make some adjustments. So I think there's a core, there's a split of the road that happens. So you have the George Floyd situation, which has, level set most of us, black, white, brown, to say, ah, this does exist. Systemic
Right.
racism. I didn't see it before. I see it now. I just saw it before with my own eyes. But then there's a follow up, the conversation. Okay, what do we do? And some say, okay, do we tear down the existing system, or do we build a new system?
Right.
And and so it's just that separation of how do we solve this problem. It lies within the comfort of allyship, an accomplice. Like,
Mhm.
how much are we willing to tear it all down and build it back up again, or do you feel like we need to just put some band-aids on it? You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Band-aids don't work. Band-aids don't work because then, but because when you uncover it, the source still there. The source still there. And so then we're in the business of putting our finger in that sore and make sure that we say, you see, it's still there. So we need to, right? Really find a conclusive remedy to fix it. So I'm just so excited. About everything that's going on. I feel blessed. I'm so thankful. I mean, it's just so exciting every time we get on a call or something happens or I receive your text, and it's so much fun too. It's so much fun. I've never laughed this much. Because there's always drama or there's always something going on.
well, I
Not
think we're
yeah,
working.
not with this. Yeah, it's just a lot going on, and so I think one of the biggest thing and what I think enjoy the most, having found my twin, from a from a head, heart, and gut place,
Mhm.
because I mean it's like when you get that hunch, we're both on calls and we're like, okay, I'm not sure, right? And but that's the thing, right? When you find that type of compatibility, it feels so right. It's so reassuring, but then you can also learn a lot, and I think one of the biggest takeaways for me these past, I want to say 6 months, has been a sharpening
Mhm.
discernment. Discernment.
Yes.
And we've had this, and I think that's a big deal for a lot of minority business enterprises too. Is like, it's like a muscle. You need to flex it to be able to build it, and discernment is a big deal. It's
Right.
knowing
Right.
who's who, what's what.
What's
Yeah.
what? What's what? Because the truth of the matter is, we're doing the work. But like you said, we ourselves, we're MBEs ourselves, but we're still operating in the current system of systemic racism. We're operating
Yeah.
businesses. We were able to build. And so while there is for sure, the resiliency, and we celebrate the abundance that we have, I think, in our communities, and what we've been able to overcome, however, there's
Hmm.
still the journey that it is
Hmm.
very isolated. It is very difficult to navigate sometimes. The waters are really rough at times. And I think what we have found, really, as you were talking, I'm like, I'm wondering if it's so much of, founder twin, but also we broke down the silo. And this is what
Hmm.
happens when silos are broken down. You get to travel that path, you go down that journey, you're not alone anymore. And I think that's like the feeling
Hmm.
I feel like when I have, the fact that however the way we connected and how we came from such a human centered place, we connected on a human level, and then everything else just aligned on top of that. But it allowed us to break down the silos. So I think we're in our relationship, and partnership is an example of what can happen when you
Hmm.
break down silos, and what true cross capacity building looks like. And
Hmm.
from a centered way, it comes down to we're not alone on the journey. And as we make decisions, that discernment, I feel good from a human perspective, just knowing, like, if I'm on a call and we're off doing our own separate meetings, we have our own, businesses, But I know that regardless of what it is, I can call Sammy, I can text her like in the middle of on a call with somebody if I'm challenged on my journey with something that doesn't sit right because we're in this system of systemic racism. And
Mhm.
so um
Mhm.
it impacts us in ways I didn't even realize. And so now I'm much more aware when something is not in alignment or when I'm having to make a moral decision about something. I
Mhm.
now have
Mhm.
somebody I can call that has is also on that journey and say, what do you think about this? I'm trying to, what do
Right.
you and even if you don't have the answer, we talk through it, and share experience. And
Mhm.
so I think that's the value. And so I
Yeah.
feel like it truly is an example because we are still, even though this hub is going to be amazing, we still have MBEs who every day we are just like we're
Yeah.
raising kids, we're developing businesses, we're doing all of this in a current system of oppression. And that is
Yeah.
heavy. Oppression sometimes it's like waves, sometimes it hits your chest, like you're standing in front of the ocean.
Mhm.
Sometimes and somebody
Yeah.
explained it to me with grief one time, like it's like you're standing in the front of the ocean and sometimes the waves hit your ankles, sometimes it comes up, it
Mhm.
hits your knee, other times it hits your chest and it'll go back down, and it doesn't last.
Yeah.
But and that's what we feel. So when those waves come, it's just to know that I'm locked hand with somebody that like, did you is this how do you
Yeah.
handle when it hits your chest, or when it hits your
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we move
Yeah.
together.
Yeah. Totally. There's just so much need that can be remedied, and yes, and I agree with you, parting from a place of abundance. And our communities are abundant in so many other ways, from a cultural perspective, from a heritage perspective, from a history perspective, from, yeah, like our ancestors and tradition and all of that good stuff, integrity and just family values and all of that stuff. But then, we're challenged because we don't have other type of wealth, right, or resources. I was just recently on a session, and I'm like, I want to build wealth. That's it, I'm done. It's like real wealth, so that way I can feel more liberated and just invest in the causes and in the initiatives and in the projects that, I think can really have big impact in the community.
So
And
you can
so
innovate.
someone on the call, what was that?
So you can innovate. The freedoms to
Well,
innovate.
exactly. But then, you're right, exactly, because business is my art, right? But then then someone on the call said something like, "Well, there's other types of wealth," and I'm like, "Yeah, I already have that kind of wealth. I already have.
Mm,
I have a huge sense of purpose. No, I want this kind of wealth,
yes,
right?"
yes,
So I
yes.
think that the end goal of all of this, and I think that, again, I feel blessed that we're working together, like it's like tattooed to our brains, right? Is to
Lock and
figure
step.
out ways, yes, lock and step, ways to bring wealth to Black and Brown and underserved and marginalized communities. And that's
Yes,
it. That's it. That's the quest right now, and
that is the quest.
yeah,
We are, yeah, that is the quest. We are not a people that black or brown that suffer from lack of culture, like you said, creativity. We've
yeah,
never been
yeah,
lack for that. We set trends,
yeah,
create culture, what we don't get to do and what's not equitable is that we don't get to prosper because of it. We
yeah,
don't we don't get to build generational wealth for our family so that our children and our grandchildren can continue and expand that creativity. And so like I talked about, having equitable amount of failure. It's even like when it's so bad when you
yeah,
can't fail in an equitable way. That is
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah,
I don't know why I'll say it. Like when I was starting with plenty of times when I started my business 15 years ago, and I go, I can't afford to screw this up. I can't
yeah,
like my entire. You have people, their entire family is legacy is on their backs. And it's
Yeah,
like I'm the one with the
exactly.
open door with the opportunity, so I don't, but that stagnates creativity. We get stuff done, but have we really we only have scratched the surface of the full potential of communities of color when it comes to, if we are unleashed, and that's what that generational wealth does. It unleashes the full potential.
Mm.
I mean, that
La
is
Quicha,
the work.
La Quicha, La Quicha. I'm ready. I'm ready, La Quicha. We're gonna- I'm sorry.
That
I
makes me
promised
laugh.
I wasn't gonna.
You're so good for that. Oh my gosh, that.
I know. I have to go into my Ricky Ricardo. When you like drop the mic, I'm like, La Quicha, I want to be unleashed. Let's
Be
unleash this shit. Let's unleash it, mama.
unleashed, and the other thing I've started to say is uninterrupted.
Yeah.
What would we be uninterrupted? You know, um, we don't know. It's yet to be seen, and that's hopeful.
Yeah.
That's where I would end with that. That is where hope lies. So I'm hopeful, because I know we have only scratched the surface. So proud of what all of our people, our communities of color, have been able to overcome. But we have to create those equitable pathways so we can unleash and be uninterrupted and relentless, and our paths to
Mm.
creating the things that we wish existed. And that is a
Yes.
world that is equity. That is
Totally.
equity.
Yep. And that's a wrap. I mean, if we add anything else, we'll ruin it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
thank you. I love
No,
you. I don't need to. I tell you almost every day, every time we
I
speak.
love you too.
But
Yeah.
I love you with all my heart. I'm so excited, and I'm really praying that 5 years from now, or even less, we look back and we say, look at our people, now everyone, you know,
And, and,
there's
and
equity.
there's equity, and we were able to help and contribute to that. And I think the
Yeah.
work we're doing, what I love about it, what I'm most proud of, is that we are create with the way we're doing it is we're unleashing and we're being uninterrupted. We're not allowing
Mhm.
anything to interrupt, and we're going full speed ahead. And so, we are again the example of what can happen. And
Mhm.
so, whatever we build, because that's what we're doing. So I thank you for just being you first off, but um, just bringing so much grit and experience and expertise, and you're brilliant. I know, I think that already. So I
Mm.
just would not be able to be as uninterrupted and unleashing, if I didn't feel like I had a partner in crime, to do
Yes.
that with. I found that in you, and I just hope
Mhm.
other people too can find the same thing. And we don't have to wait to be unleashed. We can unleash. There is a way to do
Yes.
that. We're
Yeah.
built. We
Yeah.
don't know what it's gonna look like yet, but we're built. But we're building.
But it's gonna be
We're,
good. But it's gonna
we're
be
gonna be
good.
good.
Well, listen, thank you for taking time to do this episode. And we're definitely going to do this again because it was too much fun. And just know that with you, I'm going to continue to proceed until apprehended.
But we're going. Look,
Okay.
to the end. Look.
Exactly. So anyway, I'll see you at 4 o'clock. We have that call later on
Yeah,
today.
4 o'clock.
So
Yeah.
okay.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. God bless
Yeah.
you, Mama. Love
Bye.
you. Bye
Bye.
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 This concludes this episode of I Have Something to Say. We want to thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to tell your friends about us. We're on Spotify and iTunes as well. There's more to come next week. And remember, if you have something to say, it's time to speak up.